The moment the cameras started rolling, the atmosphere on Kelly Clarkson's show felt different from the usual warmth viewers expected. Jelly Roll walked onto the set smiling, but there was a noticeable tension beneath the surface. Audience members later said the energy shifted almost immediately, as if something unresolved was hanging in the air. What began as light conversation slowly drifted into a deeper exchange about music, fame, and personal accountability, setting the stage for a clash no one anticipated. Kelly Clarkson, known for her open and empathetic interviewing style, guided the discussion toward Jelly Roll's recent rise in popularity. She praised his success but also questioned how sudden fame can change an artist's relationship with their audience. Jelly Roll listened carefully, nodding at first, but his expressions suggested discomfort. The dialogue, while still polite, carried a sharper edge, and viewers could sense that both sides were preparing to stand their ground. As the conversation continued, Kelly raised the topic of public responsibility and the influence artists have on younger fans. She spoke calmly but firmly, emphasizing the importance of mindful messaging. Jelly Roll responded by defending authenticity, arguing that honesty sometimes matters more than polish. The exchange remained respectful, yet the contrast in perspectives grew more pronounced, drawing the audience deeper into the unfolding tension. Jelly Roll began sharing personal experiences from his past, explaining how his music reflects real struggles rather than carefully curated images. Kelly acknowledged his honesty but pushed back, suggesting that growth sometimes requires re-evaluating how stories are told. This subtle disagreement marked the turning point, as Jelly Roll's tone shifted from reflective to guarded, signaling that the conversation had touched a sensitive nerve. Audience members reportedly leaned forward as Jelly Roll spoke more passionately, his words coming faster. He emphasized that his journey was shaped by hardship and that his fans connected with that raw truth. Kelly, maintaining her composure, reiterated that vulnerability and responsibility could coexist. The polite back and forth began to feel more like a debate, with neither willing to fully concede. The studio lights seemed brighter as the exchange intensified. Jelly Roll questioned whether media platforms truly allow artists to be themselves without judgment. Kelly responded by pointing out that public platforms naturally invite discussion and critique. Though neither raised their voice, the emotional weight of the conversation was unmistakable, creating a moment that felt heavier than typical daytime television fare. Jelly Roll paused, taking a breath, before stating that he often feels misunderstood by mainstream media. Kelly replied that misunderstanding can sometimes be an opportunity for dialogue rather than conflict. Her words were measured, but Jelly Roll's body language suggested frustration. He shifted in his seat, glanced away from the host, and briefly scanned the audience, as if searching for reassurance. The discussion moved toward personal boundaries, with Kelly asking how Jelly Roll handles criticism. He admitted it was challenging, especially when it felt dismissive of his lived experiences. Kelly sympathized but gently suggested that criticism isn't always an attack. This distinction, though thoughtfully presented, appeared to deepen Jelly Roll's unease rather than ease it. Viewers later described the silence between exchanges as unusually long. Jelly Roll seemed to wrestle internally before responding, choosing his words carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried a mix of resolve and strain. Kelly listened attentively, but the mutual understanding that usually defines her interviews felt just out of reach in this moment. As the conversation edged closer to its peak, Jelly Roll expressed feeling boxed onto labels that don't reflect who he is today. Kelly acknowledged the frustration but reminded him that public perception evolves with time and consistency. The statement, intended as reassurance, instead appeared to push Jelly Roll further into defensiveness, marking a critical shift in the interaction. The audience sensed something was about to give. Jelly Roll's responses grew shorter, his tone more clipped. Kelly, aware of the mounting tension, attempted to redirect the conversation toward future projects. However, the emotional momentum had already built, making it difficult to return to lighter topics without addressing what lingered beneath the surface. Jelly Roll interrupted briefly, clarifying that he didn't want his words misinterpreted. He stressed that his frustration wasn't directed personally at Kelly but at broader industry expectations. Kelly nodded, expressing appreciation for the clarification, yet the emotional intensity remained high. The exchange now felt less like an interview and more like a raw, unscripted confrontation. The studio felt quiet as Jelly Roll spoke about the pressure of being constantly analyzed. Kelly responded with empathy, sharing her own experiences with public scrutiny. For a moment, it seemed like common ground had been found. However, the relief was fleeting, as Jelly Roll's lingering frustration resurfaced almost immediately. Jelly Roll questioned whether talk shows truly allow space for complex narratives. Kelly defended the platform, stating that honest conversations are precisely what her show aims to create. The difference in perception highlighted a deeper disconnect, one rooted not in hostility but in contrasting experiences within the entertainment world. As the exchange continued, Jelly Roll's discomfort became increasingly visible. He shifted in his chair, clasped his hands idly, and avoided eye contact. Kelly's tone remained calm, but the emotional distance between them widened. The conversation, though still civil, had reached a point where resolution seemed unlikely in the moment. Jelly Roll then expressed a desire to step away from the discussion, stating that he felt overwhelmed. Kelly responded with concern, suggesting a brief pause. However, Jelly Roll stood up, thanking her for the opportunity to speak. The unexpected movement caught everyone off guard, signaling that the situation had escalated beyond a typical on-air disagreement. The audience gasped softly as Jelly Roll addressed the room, explaining that he needed space to process his emotions. Kelly appeared surprised but respectful, wishing him well. The cameras captured the moment with unflinching clarity, turning a private emotional decision into a public spectacle that would soon dominate headlines. Jelly Roll walked toward the exit, his steps deliberate but heavy. The silence in the studio was palpable, broken only by the faint sounds of movement behind the scenes. Kelly remained seated, visibly processing what had just occurred, her expression reflecting a mix of concern and professionalism. Once Jelly Roll exited, Kelly addressed the audience, acknowledging the intensity of the moment. She emphasized the importance of respecting personal boundaries and emotional honesty. Her response was measured, aiming to bring calm back to the studio while honoring the authenticity of what viewers had witnessed. Social media reactions began almost instantly, with clips circulating and opinions forming rapidly. Some viewers praised Jelly Roll for prioritizing his mental well-being, while others questioned whether walking off was necessary. Kelly received support for maintaining composure, highlighting the complexity of navigating live, emotional conversations. In the hours following the broadcast, speculation grew about what truly led to the walk-off. Commentators analyzed body language and dialogue, searching for definitive answers. Both Jelly Roll and Kelly remained largely silent initially, allowing the moment to speak for itself rather than fueling further debate. Fans of Jelly Roll expressed empathy, noting his history of openness about personal struggles. They viewed his departure as an act of self-care rather than defiance. Meanwhile, Kelly's supporters emphasized her reputation for kindness and thoughtful dialogue, framing the clash as an unfortunate but human moment. Entertainment analysts suggested the incident reflected broader tensions within the industry, where authenticity and expectation often collide. The walk-off became a talking point about how artists and media figures navigate vulnerability in public spaces. Rather than assigning blame, many saw it as a reminder of the emotional stakes involved. Days later, Jelly Roll addressed the incident indirectly, speaking about the importance of knowing when to step back. He expressed gratitude for platforms that allow honest expression while acknowledging the challenges that come with them. His words suggested reflection rather than regret, adding nuance to public interpretations. Kelly also commented in a later episode, reiterating her respect for Jelly Roll and wishing him well. She framed the moment as a testament to the unpredictability of real conversations. Her response aimed to shift the narrative away from conflict and toward understanding, reinforcing her commitment to open dialogue. The incident continued to spark discussion about mental health in the entertainment industry. Viewers debated how much emotional labor is expected from artists during interviews. Jelly Roll's walk-off became a symbol for some, representing the need to prioritize well-being over performance. Others viewed the moment as a learning experience for talk shows, highlighting the delicate balance between probing questions and emotional sensitivity. Kelly's handling of the aftermath was widely noted as an example of professionalism under pressure, even when faced with unexpected challenges. Over time, the intensity of the initial reaction softened, replaced by more reflective conversations. Fans began focusing on the broader message rather than the shock value of the walk-off. The moment, while dramatic, encouraged deeper discussions about empathy, communication, and personal limits. Industry insiders suggested that such moments, though uncomfortable, can lead to meaningful change. By exposing the emotional realities behind public personas, the incident challenged audiences to reconsider how they consume entertainment. Jelly Roll's decision to leave the stage became part of a larger narrative about authenticity. In the end, the walk-off was remembered not just as a clash, but as a raw, human moment broadcast to millions. It served as a reminder that behind the lights and cameras are individuals navigating complex emotions. The story lingered, not for its controversy alone, but for the conversations it inspired about respect, honesty, and emotional boundaries. As the weeks passed, the incident slowly shifted from breaking news to cultural reference, often cited in discussions about live television unpredictability. Media trainers referenced it as an example of how unscripted moments can redefine a broadcast. Jelly Roll's walk-off was no longer viewed only as an emotional reaction, but as a case study in how personal limits collide with professional expectations under the glare of studio lights. Viewers who revisited the episode noticed subtle cues they initially missed. Small pauses, tightened expressions, and changes in posture hinted at the emotional build-up long before the walk-off occurred. These details fueled renewed conversations online, with many acknowledging how easily emotional escalation can be overlooked when entertainment is expected to remain smooth and controlled. Jelly Roll's fan base grew more vocal in defending his decision, emphasizing his long-standing openness about mental health struggles. They argued that the ability to step away publicly sent a powerful message to fans who feel pressured to endure discomfort silently. For them, the moment transcended television drama and became an act of the visible self-advocacy. At the same time, supporters of Kelly Clarkson highlighted the difficulty of hosting live conversations with guests carrying deep personal histories. They pointed out that her questions reflected genuine curiosity rather than confrontation. This perspective framed the clash not as a failure, but as an example of two sincere viewpoints intersecting without a clear resolution. Industry psychologists weighed in, explaining how high-pressure environments can amplify emotional responses. Being under constant observation, they noted, can make even thoughtful dialogue feel overwhelming. The walk-off illustrated how emotional thresholds vary, especially when past experiences are unexpectedly triggered during public conversations. Television producers quietly reviewed their interview approaches, considering how to better support guests during emotionally charged discussions. While no official changes were announced, insiders hinted that the incident prompted renewed attention to emotional preparedness and post-interview care. The moment became a catalyst for behind-the-scenes reflection rather than public policy shifts. Jelly Roll later incorporated the experience into broader conversations during performances, speaking about knowing when to choose peace over explanation. Without naming specifics, he referenced moments where silence becomes healthier than continued dialogue. Fans interpreted this as personal growth shaped, in part, by the televised clash. Kelly Clarkson's show continued without disruption, yet the incident subtly altered viewer expectations. Audiences became more attuned to emotional dynamics, watching interviews with heightened awareness. The idea that anything could happen live added a layer of authenticity that, paradoxically, deepened viewer engagement. Commentators noted that moments like these challenged the polished image of celebrity culture. When emotions surface unexpectedly, the illusion of control dissolves. Jelly Roll's departure reminded viewers that public figures are not immune to emotional overwhelm, even in settings designed for comfort and positivity. The incident also sparked debate about audience responsibility. Some questioned whether viewers unconsciously demand emotional exposure from artists. Others argued that witnessing discomfort should encourage empathy rather than judgment. The walk-off became a mirror, reflecting how audiences respond to vulnerability when it disrupts entertainment norms. Over time, the story lost its sensational edge but retained its symbolic weight. It was referenced in discussions about boundaries, consent in conversation, and emotional transparency. What initially seemed like a dramatic interruption evolved into a teaching moment across media and creative communities. Jelly Roll's career continued upward, with fans noting a deeper sense of self-assurance in his public appearances. He appeared more selective in interviews, choosing settings that aligned with his comfort level. This shift was widely respected, seen as a direct outcome of lessons learned from the experience. Kelly Clarkson, too, reflected growth, with viewers praising her continued emphasis on compassion and adaptability. Her handling of unexpected emotional turns became part of her reputation as a host willing to prioritize humanity over a spectacle. The incident reinforced trust rather than diminishing it. In retrospectives, media analysts often describe the clash as inevitable rather than avoidable. When honest people engage honestly, friction can arise. The walk-off stood as proof that authenticity carries risk, especially when broadcast live to millions without the safety net of editing. Ultimately, the extended impact of Jelly Roll walking off Kelly Clarkson's show lay in its resonance. It wasn't remembered solely for tension or surprise, but for the questions it raised about emotional agency. Long after the cameras stopped, the moment continued to echo as a reminder that choosing oneself can be the most powerful statement of all. As retrospectives continued, media schools began referencing the moment in classrooms, not as a scandal but as an example of emotional literacy in broadcasting. Students debated whether the responsibility lies more with hosts, guests, or the structure of live television itself. Jelly Roll's walk-off became a discussion point about consent within conversation, highlighting that agreement to speak does not equal obligation to endure discomfort indefinitely. The clip's longevity online revealed how modern audiences revisit moments with evolving perspectives. Early reactions framed the event as shocking, but later commentary leaned toward empathy. Viewers who initially criticized the decision often reconsidered after hearing broader conversations about burnout, vulnerability, and the cumulative weight of public scrutiny faced by artists. Musicians across genres subtly echoed support, sharing stories of interviews that went further than expected. While few named the incident directly, the shared experiences created a quiet solidarity. The entertainment world, often competitive, briefly aligned around the idea that emotional well-being should not be sacrificed for content, ratings, or viral moments. Talk show formats themselves came under renewed evaluation. Producers discussed pacing, question framing, and emotional checkpoints during interviews. Though these conversations remained mostly private, the influence was felt in gentler transitions and clearer opt-out moments. The industry began acknowledging that authenticity must be paired with care to remain sustainable. Jelly Roll's subsequent interviews reflected a calmer confidence. He spoke openly about boundaries, emphasizing that walking away doesn't negate respect or gratitude. Fans noticed a shift toward intentional storytelling, where vulnerability was shared on his terms. This approach resonated deeply, reinforcing the idea that control over one's narrative is empowering. Kelly Clarkson's audience also evolved, appreciating her willingness to let difficult moments breathe rather than forcing resolution. Her calm response became a benchmark for handling unpredictability. Viewers praised the absence of defensiveness, noting that restraint can communicate compassion more effectively than explanation in emotionally charged situations. Cultural commentators linked the moment to a broader societal shift toward valuing mental health transparency. What once might have been labeled unprofessional was increasingly understood as self-aware. The walk-off aligned with changing norms, where stepping back is recognized as strength rather than weakness, especially in high-visibility environments. The incident also highlighted the limitations of live television. Without editing, context can be lost or misinterpreted. This reality sparked calls for audiences to consume such moments thoughtfully, resisting snap judgments. Jelly Roll's departure underscored how easily fragments can overshadow full narratives when shared without reflection. Over time, the story settled into a quieter legacy. It was no longer replayed for shock, but referenced with nuance. The conversation shifted from what went wrong to what was learned. In that sense, the moment transcended entertainment, becoming part of a larger dialogue about human limits. Fans who discovered Jelly Roll after the incident often encountered the story as background rather than headline. For them, it added depth to his music, framing his lyrics within lived experience. The walk-off became a chapter, not a definition, enriching rather than overshadowing his public identity. Similarly, longtime viewers of Kelly Clarkson's show cited the moment as proof of its authenticity. Live television, they argued, should reflect real emotions, not just rehearsed joy. The incident reinforced trust that what happens on screen isn't always tidy, but it is genuine. In interviews years later, both figures spoke about growth without revisiting specifics. Their reflections emphasized learning, respect, and the unpredictability of honest conversation. The absence of lingering resentment suggested that the clash, while intense, did not define their professional relationship. Media historians categorized the walk-off among pivotal unscripted television moments that reveal more than planned segments ever could. Such moments disrupt narratives but also humanize them. Jelly Roll's choice to leave the stage became emblematic of agency exercised in real time. As conversations about boundaries continued to evolve, the incident remained relevant. It was cited in discussions about workplace wellness, creative autonomy, and emotional consent. The resonance endured because it reflected a universal truth: knowing when to step away can be an act of clarity. Ultimately, the expanded story wasn't about conflict, but about choice. Jelly Roll's walk-off and Kelly Clarkson's response together illustrated two forms of strength meeting under pressure. The moment endures not for division, but for reminding audiences that empathy, when allowed space, can outlast controversy.